Okay, let's dive into this. There's one name that for centuries has meant prophecy, mystery, and a lot of head scratching: Nostradamus. So today, we're going to put on our detective hats and try to crack one of his most famous puzzles, a cryptic little message that's nearly 500 years old. And here it is, in all its 16th century glory. You can just feel how old it is, right? The strange spelling, the archaic French. This is the exact text we are going to unpack. So, what on earth is it trying to tell us? Yeah, that is the big question, isn't it? Is this a genuine peek into the future? A reference to some long forgotten event? Or is it just, poetic nonsense? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out. So, our investigation starts right here. This specific piece of the puzzle is known as Quatrain 7 from Century 1, and it's just one of nearly 1,000 prophecies written by the French astrologer Michel de Nostradamus, who of course the world knows better as Nostradamus. So what we're looking at is something called a quatrain, which is really just a fancy word for a four-line verse. But Nostradamus, he packed these simple little verses with enough mystery to keep people arguing for half a millennium. And just think, this all started back in the 1550s, a completely different world. All right, time to get our hands dirty. Let's do some real detective work here. We're going to break this thing down line by line using a modern translation just to see what kind of clues we can dig up. Okay, line 1. Arrived too late. The act has been done. Wow, right? It feels so dramatic. Like we're jumping in at the end of the story, not the beginning. There's this sense of finality, like a huge opportunity was just missed. The plot is already thickening. And this just builds on that drama. The wind was against them. That's a classic way to say you've got bad luck and everything's going wrong. But then we get something a little more specific. Letters intercepted. That sounds a lot like a secret plan, maybe some espionage, a message that never arrived. Now, the next line is where things get really interesting. After all that vague talk about acts and wins, we suddenly get a number: 14 conspirators. This feels like our first solid piece of evidence, something we can actually work with. Yeah, this number, 14. In this sea of vague poetic language, the number 14 feels like an anchor. It's something tangible, something you can almost grab onto. It makes you think, okay, maybe this is about a real event, a real group of people. And then the final line drops what seems to be our biggest clue yet: a name: Rousseau. So let's recap. We've got a failed plan, a group of 14 conspirators, and a leader or key figure named Rousseau. I mean, the case seems to be coming together, right? Or is it? Well, just when we think we've got all the clues lined up, we have to stop and remember who wrote this. The fact that this is so hard to read, that's not a bug, it's a feature. It's the entire point. You see, Nostradamus was an absolute master of what we call cryptic writing. He wasn't trying to give you a clear headline about the future. No, he was crafting puzzles. He wanted the language to be obscure, mysterious, and wide open to interpretation. And here's basically his recipe for making things confusing and timeless. He'd mix in words from French, Latin, and Greek. He'd use puns and anagrams to hide different meanings. He'd throw in all sorts of vague symbols, and, this is a big one, he almost never gave a clear date. You put all that together, and you get prophecies that are incredibly flexible. So let's go back to our best clue, that name Rousseau. But now let's look at it through the lens of his method. This is where our seemingly solid case just completely starts to unravel. It seems like such a simple question, doesn't it? But with Nostradamus, nothing is ever simple. Who, or maybe even what, is this Rousseau? The moment you look closer, that solid clue just fractures into a million possibilities. Is it a real person? Okay, maybe, but the most famous Rousseau, the philosopher Jean-Jacques, wasn't even born for another 200 years. So is an anagram for something else? Could it be a symbol? Or maybe it isn't a person at all, but a place. Suddenly, our best clue is our biggest question mark. And that right there, leads us to the real secret. The whole reason we are still talking about Nostradamus today. The confusion, this Rousseau problem. It isn't a flaw in his prophecies. It's actually their most powerful feature. Here's the key takeaway. The vagueness is not a weakness, it's the engine. It's what has kept these prophecies running for almost 500 years.
Because the language is so open, people from any time period can look at it and project their own events, their own fears, right onto the text. And this gets to the very heart of why it works so well. See, our brains are basically pattern-finding machines. We're hardwired to see connections and find meaning, even in total randomness. Nostradamus just provides let's call it the static, and then our minds do the rest of the work. We see an event happen, and then we look back and fit the prophecy to it. It's a neat psychological trick.
So, in the end, it turns out we haven't really been decoding a message from the 16th century at all. We've been looking at a mirror. This little quatrain, it just reflects our own deep, very human desire to find order in a chaotic world, and to believe that someone, somewhere, knows what's coming next. So maybe that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Is it possible the real prophecy wasn't about any specific event? Maybe the true, unintended prediction was about us, about our timeless, unending quest to find patterns in the static, and to solve puzzles that were never really meant to have a single answer in the first place.